camera.
Okay.
Get out of here right now before I seize that, and that's going where that gun cars are going. Now!
I don't think he should be here.
I'm not going to twist anything, guys.
You are. You are.
No,
Your
we don't want
organization has really.
Please.
No, please turn it off.
Turn it off.
Turn it off.
You get out of here right now.
Please.
You're
Turn
in
it
our
off.
land. You have to leave. Thank
Hey,
you.
please don't touch. Hey, man, you can't touch me, all right?
Well,
What?
shut it.
Just because you're a fighter? Never messed around with me before.
Hey, man, you're threatening me. Come on.
No, we ask you to get off our territory. Or get off our land
All
right
but
now.
Please don't touch.
Extremist anti-fracking activists from New Brunswick. Not only did their fellows in the Micmac Warriors gang torch several police cars in a massive riot where 40 people were arrested, but when we here at the Sun News Network reported the story straight, well, as you saw there, they turned on us, threatening our Chris Sims, trying to carjack her. And then when Josh Skurnick went to a public press conference, they intimated that if he didn't go, they'd fight with him. Well, why do so many people hate fracking to the point of violence? What actually is fracking? Where is it used? What has it done for the price of gas, for jobs? Well, joining us now to talk about this from Calgary is Justin Anderson, who is a research analyst for Salmon Partners, which covers companies, including companies that frack. Welcome to the show, Justin. It's great to see you.
Good to be with you.
I mean, we've talked about other sources of energy, expensive energy like wind turbines and solar power, but the energy revolution in North America that is reducing our bills for gas, and in the States, gas-fired power plants, that's all about fracking, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of years has been a consumer's dream come true. I mean, we've seen a massive increase in gas supply and long-term gas supply, which is really going to help consumers in the long run, you know, have lower gas prices and cheaper heating bills. So yeah, it's been a great revolution for the consumer, and you know, we should continue on forward, obviously.
I mean, just a few years ago, natural gas was what, $8-9 per 100,000 BTU. Now it's between 2 and 3. I mean, I can't think of any other commodity that we use so much of in our regular lives that has been chopped in thirds price-wise. I mean, a lot of that is in the States, but that shale gas fracking revolution has come to Canada too. How has that changed the world in terms of energy supply? I mean, it used to be that OPEC was the cartel for oil, and there's a gas version of OPEC with Iran, Qatar, and Russia. But now America and Canada too are becoming natural gas powerhouses. How does that change the geopolitics?
It's really interesting, you know. Call it 5 years ago even, any talk about U.S. or North American energy independence was really a pipe dream. It was a political ploy to kind of sound good, but it wasn't couched in reality. And now it's kind of the reverse. You know, by 2020, it's very likely that the North America will be energy independent, both on oil and obviously on gas. So I think it's fundamentally changing, you know, the geopolitical dynamic. And then on top of it, we saw this year this announcement by you know, Petronas to buy Progress Energy, and this $36 billion investment that they're moving forward. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means LNG is coming to the west coast of Canada.
Now, LNG, for our viewers who don't know, that's liquefied natural gas. I mean, natural gas obviously is a gas, but if you compress it and cool it, you can turn it into liquid form, put it on a ship, and move it around the world. Sort of like they do with oil. Of course, oil is naturally liquid. How would LNG, what would that do for BC? That would basically take BC gas and bring it to Japan, Korea, places like that, where gas is extremely expensive, right? I mean, we're producing it in BC for $2 or $3 per 100,000 BTU, but it sells in Japan, Korea for like $18. I mean, it's a massive arbitrage opportunity.
It's incredible. I mean, what we would have is the best of both worlds. Domestically, our consumers would be spending, you know, $2 to $3 an MCF for consumption, and yet we'd be selling the gas for, you know, huge numbers, you know, $12 to $14 per MCF kind of in the long term. So that kind of arbitrage would be a huge windfall for Canadian consumers, for Canadian taxpayers, for, you know, for governments in terms of royalties generated, and obviously jobs and you know, thriving economy.
Well, I got to think that just like OPEC despises the oil sands because the oil sands are an alternative and we break up their monopoly, I got to think that Qatar, Iran, and Russia despise fracking, because without fracking, those three countries dominate the world's natural gas industry. But if Canada starts to become a gas exporter and we start shipping it to places like Japan, Korea, maybe even Europe, that's going to cut into the massive margins that those three countries are making. They got to be furious.
No, it's absolutely right. I think they have a serious interest in, in call it meddling in our affairs to try to slow down the process of the resource development. But I'm not sure they're probably a little too late to the party, because the resource boom is well underway and shows signs of continuing. Despite all these strange protests that we're seeing against basic infrastructure like pipelines and fracking technology.
In the BC election in May, natural resources were a huge topic, and oil sands and oil pipelines were part of it. But both the NDP and the Liberals are sort of warmish to natural gas and fracking, which surprises me, because those two parties are different degrees of negative to oil pipelines, but they were friendly-ish to fracking. Here's a clip of Christy Clark, the premier who was running for re-election in May. She was asked whether or not she would basically put a moratorium on fracking while it was reviewed. Here's her way of explaining that she wouldn't. Take a listen.
We already have multiple reviews going on at different times. Right now, we have a review of the air quality, and we need to make sure that we're monitoring the water use. So I guess I've never said we want a review on fracking. What I have said is we want to make sure that we're always reviewing how well we're doing things, to make sure we're doing it as well as we possibly can and find ways to do it better. But this idea, the NDP idea, is they want to review fracking because they might stop it. And I have never said that we want to go out and do a review with a view to find out whether or not we should be doing it at all. I know we do it well.
You can see she was a little bit tentative there, but since that time, she's become a real booster. And of course, it was only after she was reelected that Petronas pressed start. Politics really has an impact here, Justin. Could you imagine Petronas risking a $36 billion investment in BC if the NDP had come along? Of course they wouldn't. But with Christy Clark's increasing confidence, yeah, they're willing to gamble 36. I can't even believe I'm saying that number, 36 billion. I may as well just say a gazillion. It's so much dough, and it's pouring into BC. If no matter what else happens, that one investment is going to raise that province up.
Yeah. No, I think, you mentioned the politics. Politicians of all stripes are engaged on this issue simply because it's become a political issue, and they're going to respond to political incentives. And we're seeing, talk from across the spectrum in different terms. The Conservatives aren't free of blame as well. If you look at, the deal that was done when CNOC bought Nexen and Petronas did this, they came out with this discussion about, only approving deals under extraordinary conditions, which, for the oil sands is a very tough thing to hear, because one of the only real buyers of those those plays are the Chinese, and some of these large plays that are sort of only going to be approved going forward in extraordinary circumstances. So again, the Conservatives are responding to political incentives. They remember full well what happened when BHP bid on Potash Corp in Saskatchewan, and how much the people were essentially against that deal. And there's still a lot of protectionism flowing through a lot of people in this country. And you combine that with all this kind of environmental rhetoric around pipelines and fracking and this sort of stuff, it becomes a political hot potato. And politicians of all stripes, I think, are playing, dancing through this minefield very carefully.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because generally the Conservatives are pro-investment and pro-natural resources, but you are so right. If you say that no state-owned company can buy an oil firm, you're basically, with China, they got more than $3 trillion of foreign currency reserves. They're looking to put it somewhere. And if you basically say to the oil sands, you may not raise money from China, well, you're writing off the world's largest investor. And I understand the politics behind it. I'm a critic of the Chinese Communist Party too, but you're basically saying to the oil sands, you can only get money from the world's gentlest people. Oh, now go and compete against the world's bastards at Saudi Aramco and PDVSA. It's incredible. Well, this fracking thing, though, I want to say one more point about it. And this is going to surprise a lot of people. Canada's greenhouse gas emissions, if you care about that sort of thing, and I don't, but some people do, Canada's greenhouse gas emissions are down under Stephen Harper's watch. And in the United States, this is what's so incredible, Justin, the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States are down to 1992 levels. Seriously, they haven't been this low in 20 years. And it's not because the United States ratified Kyoto. They never did. It's because of fracking. It's because natural gas has replaced coal as the fuel of choice for power plants. It's amazing to me that fracking isn't just a source of jobs and cheap energy. It's cleaning up the air. Last word to you, Justin.
Well, you know, it reminds me, I like that example because it's sort of this law of unintended consequences. You know, everybody talks about, you know, stopping emissions and doing this. And at the end of the day, it was this sort of quote-unquote evil technology, fracking, that actually was the driver of lowering emissions. And we see the same kind of rhetoric overseas when people, you know, are anti-market and against free markets. And actually, free markets have been the great liberator of poverty that we've seen over the last few decades. You know, so oftentimes people, you know, demonize the very thing that is the source of improving the overall situation. I think people should take a hard look at, you know, some of these facts and try to change their opinions.
Justin, great to have you on the show. Thanks very much, and Merry Christmas to you. Folks, stick around. More Source after the break. You know, people say hewers of wood and drawers of water is an insult. That's how it meant in the Bible. But I don't agree that Canada's resource industry is something to be embarrassed about or shy about. If oil and gas and uranium and potash and all the other things we mine and drill for in Canada are in high demand around the world, all the better for us. And it's a mistake to think those are low-tech, low-paying jobs. Just the opposite. You get a degree in sociology from some university, yeah, you got a student debt and you won't get a job much better than Starbucks. Get a trade and go work for the oil patch, you'll be making six figures in no time. I think there's a bit of a snobbery and a fake futurism about thinking, oh, we'll all work doing Twitter and taking Instagram pictures of each other, and no one will actually do real work like digging and drilling and pumping and burning. That's what powers the rest of things. I think that we have to realize that natural gas and coal, which is going nowhere. I mean, China needs more coal than ever. It's using half the world's coal. Oil, uranium, these things are a blessing to Canada. In fact, for some of these resources, we have more accessible oil and gas, in the oil sense, for example, than in the rest of the free world combined. It's a great strategic advantage, not just an economic advantage. If people can buy their energy from Canada as opposed to an OPEC dictatorship, why wouldn't they? It's not just great for us, it's great for our American friends to the south, if only they'd approve the Keystone XL pipeline. I enjoyed my discussion with Justin Anderson when we talked about how the three dictatorships, I'd calling Russia a quasi-dictatorships of Iran, Qatar, and Russia, who oppose fracking, they do so for their own interests. Well, I think Canadians should start making fracking in the oil sands something we positively boast about. We are the ethical energy source of the world, and no matter what foreign environmental busybodies have to say. I'm Ezra Levant, talking about energy, folks. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah. See you later.